Okay, welcome to the Quennevais History Department Transition Project, and we're basing it on a local site, as you can see. So this is Gatehouse Castle. A few basic facts: made in the mid 14th century, okay, so the 1350s or so. It survived for about 200 years to the mid 16th century, and then it was torn down. So let's have a look at the site. Let's see what's important about it, what it tells us about local history, but also national history. So let's get going. Okay, so as we can see here, very iconic gatehouse shape there. Now, how do we get into it? Well, if we walk a bit further, and I try not to fall in, you can see there's a ditch, and another ditch over there. So you would have had your drawbridge coming down over there, but of course, let's pretend that the castle is under siege, so that's not the case. Okay, there's a lot of things that we have to imagine would be there. Let's take the tourist route in. So let's follow this track. And we reach this lovely set of steps up into the castle. Now, these steps would not have existed at the time the castle was being used for defence. As you can see on this step here, it says 1909. They were built simply for tourists. You have to imagine that the gatehouse would be shut, as we said, and there would be a rope hanging down here into the ditch. And anyone who was friendly to the castle or had supplies and wanted to get into the castle while the drawbridge was up would climb the rope up here, but I'll use the steps because it's a bit handier. Now we're in the castle itself. What are the defensive features of it? First obvious place to look at is the gatehouse. So this is from the inside this time, and what we can see is first of all these two grooves mirroring each other, where you would have had a drawbridge put up into those grooves. There is also, although it's slightly covered over at this stage, there is also a groove for the drawbridge to pivot as well, although that has been, I'll try and find out after, but it has been covered. So quite a formidable defence first of all. We then shift on, and either side around the drawbridge, around the gatehouse, you have these battlements, these walkways that you could walk up to, and again defend the castle from that stage. And then we have either side these round towers, or the remnants of round towers. So these would be much higher. If we go in, we can see these openings. Now if you look, they're very wide on the outside, but they go to a very narrow point. The reason for that is that it would be used for archers, bow and arrow, and this width on the inside would mean that the archer would be able to maneuver himself and put the point of the arrow towards this narrow part and pick out whoever he liked. But because this narrow part was here, it meant it would be virtually impossible to fire in, so it would give a lot of protection. And of course, as a circular tower, it would give full range and full view over the surrounding area. Of course, one of the biggest defensive features is the location of the castle. And again, rather than losing myself or my phone, don't know what's more valuable, over the side, let's just have a little look here. So you can see here, it's built in the northwest corner of Jersey, and it's at the top of a 60-metre cliff, and it's a tiny little peninsula jutting out as well, so it's virtually impossible to attack, although the French did manage to scale up those cliffs at one point, but must have been a hell of an effort. If we go further in, the buildings that we have in the castle, or the remnants of them, what we can tell about them, also indicate to us what the castle was used for. So we have in the middle of it these two buildings. Now, what we can see from the structure is two things. First of all, where the floor would have been, and it's not there anymore, this space underneath was for air to circulate, so it was more of a food store than anything else. And we can also tell that there were no windows in this structure when it was complete. Archaeologists can tell that. So this was not a place, let's make it clear, for people to live permanently. There were stores. There may have been some temporary structures for people to sleep in if things were desperate, but on the whole this castle was only for emergency use. Okay, so why was it built for emergency use? What would happen is when the French invaded, The people, the parish bells of the western parishes, St. One, St. Peter, St. Brelard's, would ring, and the people, the family of the western parishes, would come here as quickly as they could. This was a refuge against constant French attacks. People were meant to live here. It might have been garrisoned very briefly, but on the whole, this was not a place for occupation. There was no well in here, there was no fresh water, so actually if this castle was put under serious siege, then the people would have to give up pretty quickly as well. So, in terms of local history, why was it the case that St. One's and the western parishes needed it? Well, we've just said the French attacks would be quite constant. Why would that be the case? Well, at this time, England and France were fighting the 100 Years' War, which lasted 117 years. And skirmishes also continued after that as well. And Jersey was a frontier post for this warfare. We were in the thick of the action. The reason for that is we are, I suppose, a peculiarity of the English crown, but we are just off the coast of France, so we're very close. So in many ways we're an insult to the French pride that we are English territory, but really we should belong to France because we can see France, but England's much further away. Also economically, the French are damaged by the fact that Jersey belongs to England. Economically, the English would use this as a harbour, a place to trade, a stop-off point for their ships, but also strategically it's a place where it could be used as a launching pad for an attack on French soil. So this was, as I said, a frontier post for the 100 Years' War, and this was why it was used. So this tells us a lot about why Quennevais was made. It was very much a place where Jersey people had to come for refuge when the conflict became too much. We were in a war zone during this point. When it was eventually dismantled in the 1500s or the mid-16th century, it was because that conflict had died down to a certain extent, and most of the granite that was taken, as you can see, there would have been a lot more granite, it would have been a much more complete castle wall, was taken to improve the state of the building at St. One's Manor. Okay, so this is a sense of Quennevais Castle. These are some features of the castle. It's how it fits into local history and also its place in national history. And your challenge is to do the same thing for a local site near you. Good luck.